Welcome to Channel Tech's multimedia live stream for November 24th, streaming live to your device from beautiful city of Brisbane in Australia. Well, today is a very important day. There's some very important announcements, and very soon we'll be joining our Premier as he makes this announcement about the Queensland border, which is on the topic and everyone's been worried about it. And of course, we know there has been some severe weather warnings. We will look at all of them. Well, let's get into this for today, but first of all, let's welcome Tilraj with the weather news.
Good morning, everyone. Weather forecast for the rest of today is maximum 31 degree. Brisbane area is partly cloudy with medium chance of showers, most likely this afternoon and evening. There is chance of thunderstorm from early afternoon to early evening, possibly severe in the west. Light winds becoming east to southeasterly 20 to 30 km per hour in the early afternoon. Fire danger is high, sun protection is recommended till 3:30 and UV index is predicted to reach 11, that is extreme. In 2020 to 2021, we are expecting severe weather conditions and we are in La Nina event as declared by Bureau of Meteorology. Queensland Parliament got special briefing on this prediction of severe weather condition. Let's join that briefing.
Message for this severe weather season is pretty clear. We're in a La Nina event which was declared by the Bureau of Meteorology in September. And what that means for Queensland is that we are expected to see a higher amount of rainfall this season, which could therefore lead to above average amount of flooding for the state. And it's also important to note that with the La Nina, we typically see more tropical cyclones than average as well. So while last severe weather season, there was a real focus on the bushfires, that is a shift for this season where even though the bushfire season is still ongoing and has affected parts of Queensland, it's a lot less severe than what we saw last year, and we are expecting more flooding and more tropical cyclones this season. So typically we see 4 tropical cyclones in the Coral Sea, with 1 to 2 of those crossing the coast. So if we're expecting an above average season, while I can't give exact or specific numbers, I can say that we are likely to see more than that amount. So more than 4 this season in the Coral Sea. And I should also mention that we do also see 1 to 2 in the Gulf of Carpentaria each season as well.
So there you are, the severe weather warning and of course the La Nina effect that we are going through at this point in time. Well, let's take a quick look at the headlines for today and before we join the Premier for that important, very important announcement.
Channel keeping across what's happening both here in Australia and overseas. You can also catch up online with news.abc.net.au and on iView. Here are the top stories on ABC News. The creators of the Oxford COVID-19 vaccine, which has been shown to be up to 90% effective, say its ability to be widely distributed gives it an edge over other candidates. 2 other drugs from Pfizer and Moderna have both demonstrated around 95% effectiveness, but require extreme cold storage, making transportation difficult. Queensland's Premier will get a border closure briefing today from the state's Chief Health Officer. New South Wales has gone more than 28 days without an unlinked case of coronavirus, while Victoria hasn't recorded any new infections for 25 days. A decision on the Queensland border is expected by the end of the month. Authorities in Qatar have charged the mother of a baby girl abandoned in an airport toilet with attempted murder and moved to prosecute police officers who ordered invasive searches of female passengers. The incident made international headlines after 13 Australian women came forward and said they were forced to undergo examinations at the Hamad International Airport after the newborn was found. And the debate over development of the Daintree rainforest in far north Queensland, or at least access for tourists, is increasing, with a council survey to determine whether a bridge should be built over the Daintree River. At the moment, the only way to travel north of the river is to catch a ferry, but in peak season, congestion causes significant delays.
And I'd say that leave it as it is. But right now for that, the much awaited update on Queensland border, let's join our Premier.
First day back of Parliament. Everyone's excited. Okay, just let me know when everyone's right.
Yep, ready to go.
Everyone's good. Okay, well, good morning, Queensland. And of course, in good news today, we only have one new case in Queensland, which was acquired in hotel quarantine from overseas. And we are expecting to see more of those because we know that there's a lot of COVID out there in the Northern Hemisphere, and as people are returning back to Australia and Queensland, we're expecting to see more of that. We currently have 15 active cases, and in the past 24 hours there's been more than 5,300 tests. So that's, once again, really good news. And once again, if you're sick, stay at home, get tested, and we've got to keep up those testing rates, Queensland, because as Dr Young says, we need to find that first case if we are going to maintain to be on top of this. Well, today I have great news for Queensland and also really good news with what's been happening in other states. So today I had a meeting with Dr Young and, of course, the Deputy Premier and the Health Minister. And Dr Young has been in extensive conversations with the New South Wales Chief Officer. Dr Young is now satisfied that they have reached the over the 28 days. So can I say to New South Wales, we welcome you to Queensland from the 1st of December. We know how tough this has been on families. This is a great day, it's exciting news, and it has met the requirements that Dr Young has set. In further good news, tomorrow is the day that Victoria will meet that threshold as well. So I will update everybody again tomorrow morning. I have been in contact with both the New South Wales Premier and the Victorian Premier, and I've advised also the Victorian Premier, Daniel Andrews, that if they reach that 28 days tomorrow, then they too will be open on the 1st of December. We are in contact with the airlines. We know how important it is that the airlines are able to plan. People are able to plan for their holidays as well, and Queensland is good to go. We absolutely want to see our tourism industry continue to flourish and prosper. It might be a little bit difficult getting some accommodation somewhere because of our successful campaign. A lot of tourism operators are saying that they are booked out, but we do want to encourage families to get together before Christmas. This has always been the aspiration of the National Cabinet, and as I've always said, my number one priority is to keep Queenslanders safe. We always act on the advice of Dr Young, and that is exactly what we have done today. And in relation to South Australia, that will be reviewed at the end of the month. As we do know, there is that cluster down there that Dr Young does have some concerns with, but we will update everyone again at the end of the month. So from the 1st of December, if all things are going well for Victoria, tomorrow both New South Wales and Victoria will be open for Queensland. Queensland families can travel there and vice versa from the 1st of December. I hope this is welcome news. I think it's great news in the lead up for Christmas, but once again that timely reminder for everybody, we need to make sure that we continue to keep up our social distancing, our good hand hygiene as well. That is really important. But once again, thank you to everyone, and can I pay special tribute to Dr Young and her team, and to both Stephen Miles and Yvette Darth for the great work that they have done as well into keeping Queenslanders safe. So I'll hand over to Dr Young.
So one new case in Queensland overnight, and that was an overseas traveller who was in hotel quarantine. We are seeing more and more cases in hotel quarantine, and that's to be expected as we see the case numbers elsewhere in the world continue to rise. But having them in hotel quarantine means that we protect Queenslanders. Now it is 28 days since New South Wales had an unlinked case. So all of their cases since then have been linked and able to be traced back to known outbreaks, known clusters, which means that we can reopen our border to New South Wales on the 1st of December, which was always in our planning going forward. And hopefully we will be doing exactly the same thing for Victoria, and we'll see their case numbers today and tomorrow and be able to make that announcement. South Australia, we're still waiting to see how their outbreak unfolds. It's been really good so far. They've had only small numbers, we're up to 27 yesterday. We just have to see what happens in that first incubation period. So we were first notified of a case around 10 days ago on that Saturday. So we now have to see what other cases come out of that. They've had a really good rapid response down there. So they had another case yesterday, which was 8 days after that person had been exposed. So we just need to wait for a little bit longer before we can decide what needs to happen. All of their cases to date have been linked. They've been able to trace them back to that breach in their hotel quarantine process. So that's very good news. The important thing though, and I'm positive that every Queenslander knows this, the important thing is to recognise that this virus is circulating throughout the world, that the case numbers are increasing. We're very safe here because of our international border restrictions, but it could happen at any time. It was so unexpected when they got that case in South Australia, and their hospital system down there is to be commended that they picked up that case so quickly, who presented to one of their emergency departments. So we have to do the same here in Queensland. I have every confidence we will. Any cough, cold, sniffle, sore throat, please, diarrhoea, nausea, vomiting, any symptom, anywhere in the state, we don't know what might have been the cause. Please just come forward and get tested. And it is wonderful to see the large numbers of Queenslanders still coming forward. That is so critical, because if we find the first case in an outbreak, we can get on top of it very, very quickly and not have to do all those close downs that none of us want to see. So please, everyone, just come forward if you have any symptoms. That is very, very important.
And that is very, very important, as Dr. Janet Yang has said. Well, of course, it is good news that, Queensland is good to go. Well done, Premier. I think that's an excellent news. This is the news that many people had been waiting for, and we are happy to bring this news to you via our channel here. And, of course, tomorrow morning she will be making that announcement, but she's pretty sure that Victoria will also be good to go. So, the word of caution would be that, airlines will be booked out, because the people would be making bookings left, right and center. So if you need to book any flights, as the Premier said, that the accommodations are already tight, because people have already booked, Queenslanders have already booked holidays within Queensland. So, most of the accommodations over the holiday period, you'll find it a tough go trying to find a booking or trying to find accommodation, because that has already been booked, and everyone have, been making those bookings and taking advantage of the promotion that Queensland government put forward. Well, Queensland so far so good. We're looking at the New South Wales Premier not doing very well, because she did go in for a test, but she did not self-isolate. Whether it was the right thing or not the right thing, whether the Premiers should be exempt or one rule should apply to everyone, that's the big question as we join that news.
Facts were, an ordinary person probably wouldn't have needed the test at all, because I didn't have any of the symptoms. The facts were, an ordinary person probably wouldn't have needed the test at all, because I didn't have any of the symptoms apart from being tired and losing my voice, and it hasn't completely come back. There's no symptoms whatsoever. Perhaps in hindsight I should have closed my door and not seen anybody for that 90 minutes to 2 hours, but I didn't.
So you're going to change the New South Wales guidelines now, because they say that if you have a test, you've got to self-isolate?
Sure, and also you have to have a test when health asks you to, and health will ask you to have a test.
But the question is, are you going to change the guidelines?
Yep. Absolutely not. Why would I change the guidelines?
Well, because you're not following them.
Do myself. Well, no, I'm sorry, but I would never do that. I would never ever do that. My mission has been from day one putting the people of this state first, and that's why, through an abundance of caution, I didn't have any symptoms. I didn't have a sore or scratchy throat. I didn't have a runny nose. I didn't have any of the symptoms.
But you took a test and didn't self-isolate. And the guidelines say if you take a test, you have to self-isolate.
I accept that.
So you didn't follow your own guidelines.
You
do accept that you didn't follow your own guidelines.
Yeah, I accept that in hindsight I should have kept my door shut for the 90 minutes or the 2 hours until I was waiting for the result. I do accept that, and in hindsight I should have done that.
It is a big risk these days, the complacency. You've warned about it as well. I mean, you must feel some regret that as a leader you are not setting an example.
Can I say that it's absolutely complacency that's my biggest fear? I still haven't hugged my parents, right? That is really hard since February. I haven't let anyone touch me, even though people run up to you in the middle of the street. And I put my elbow out, which is rude for me, but I do that. And it's only because I am so vigorous against fighting against complacency that I took the test, because I didn't have a symptom.
So there you are, a tough call there, but she has a lot of things to do, but by the same token, rules are rules, especially when it comes to, this kind of strict rules that's been put in place for everyone. As we know, our Lord Mayor went to Adelaide for the conference, and there's been so many big functions that he had to attend, but he's at home, he's not coming out and not, within the community, as they say. So anyway, my personal take is that rules are rules, and that they really need to be followed. And it was a tough call on the announcer there trying to get the facts out of the Premier. Well, of course, Qantas is making another rule because now as restrictions ease, people will start traveling. And one of the things that I said in the very beginning was, that they could have kept a lot of borders and things open if they had found a way of really testing and, only people cleared would get on board. Well, Qantas is saying now people have to, once the vaccine is available, that they'll have to show a certificate they've had the vaccination, because Qantas is saying that no jab, no fly.
Yeah, we are looking at changing our terms and conditions to say for international travellers that we will ask people to have a vaccination before they can get on the aircraft. What do you need that domestically? We'll have to see what happens with COVID-19. I'm talking to my colleagues in other airlines around the globe, and I think it's going to be a common theme across the board. And what we're looking at is how you can have a vaccination, a passport, an electronic version of it that certifies what the vaccine is it acceptable to the country you're travelling to.
So there you go. So there's a sign of times to come is no jab, no fly. At this point in time, it is going to be mainly for international travelers, and what the domestic travel would look like would be another thing. Well, right now, let's go to South Australia, where it is coming to terms to get to the bottom of the matters of that lockdown.
We are going hard and we are going early. As of midnight tonight, we need our community to pause for 6 days.
It was an unprecedented lockdown, based partly on fears the virus had spread to a customer from a pizza box. But the customer's story wasn't true.
What's increasingly clear is there are a group of individuals associated with the Woodville Pizza Bar who were not full and frank with contact traces. Initially we thought this person was a customer. They turned out to be a worker.
The unexpected turn of events led to a reduction in the threat of virus transmission, and restrictions were lifted early. The Minister stands by the initial decision to lock down.
The modelling produced by the universities have indicated that if we hadn't acted early, if we hadn't acted decisively, we could be facing 100, 200 cases a day by the middle of December.
At the moment we're on day 6 of quarantine. My husband and I were tossing up between a few pizza shops, and being Friday the 13th, I think it's a bit ironic that we ended up choosing the Woodville Pizza Bar.
Nicole Mazika is one of dozens of pizza store customers who've been forced into quarantine. She's furious the man turned out to be a worker at the shop and withheld that information from authorities.
I just thought, why would you need to lie? So what is the reasons for his lie? So just really angry that there wasn't truth around that, and that, he's really affected a lot of people's lives.
The pizza bar worker is a 36-year-old in Australia on a temporary graduate visa which expires next month. A task force of 36 police officers has been set up to investigate the workers' actions. There's been a huge public backlash against him and the restaurant.
I will say we absolutely need to make this clear. There's no presumption here of guilt. We're looking at all the facts and all the legislation, and based on that very fair and honest assessment, then we'll see if there's a charge to be laid.
I really abhor this idea of blaming and shaming people. We cannot have politicians and senior people believing that they only claim responsibility when things go well, but that everything that goes wrong is the fault of other people or the people.
Infectious diseases expert Bill Botel says it's the system that failed, and shaming the worker could have unintended consequences, similar to what was seen during the AIDS epidemic.
People will not come forward either to work in a system or to be tested if they feel that their trust is being violated, confidentiality is being ignored.
The pizza bar employee caught the virus from a co-worker who was also a security guard at Pepper's quarantine hotel. Another security guard and a cleaner were also infected at the facility.
It's a very casual industry. It's like hospitality, really. We jump around a lot.
Mark Whitehouse owns an Adelaide security company. He says the casualised nature of hotel quarantine work is an issue, as it tends to attract less experienced guards.
The problem in the security industry is everyone's got a full-time job. You know, all the experienced guards are out there working already, so when something high risk, you know, comes along like this, it's going to be difficult to attract those people to it.
He also claims staff turnover is high in hotel quarantine. 730 has learned the security company given the lead contract, MSS Security, issued an urgent plea for new officers just 3 weeks ago.
We had one this morning. The security guard came in for an interview. He was, you know, obviously interested in doing some other employment. He'd lasted, I think, 2-3 weeks in a hotel quarantine environment.
My understanding is that there has been a significant demand on a whole range of workers. We've got pressure on police, on nurses and on security guards.
So there you go. Of course, the shortage in that industry has also led to many things. And of course, there are many security companies who are being approached that they want so many security guards. And if they don't have, they need to recruit new ones. And what sort of training and how much training is given is another matter, because they need to get people into the places to comply with their contract. If they might have a contract with the government, they will need to supply that many security guards. So once again, it is a question of integrity, whereby what kind of personnel are you sending? Are they fully trained? What are the risks associated with it as well? So there are some questions that really need to be answered, and that investigation is ongoing. Well, right now, going back to New South Wales, where the Chief Health Officer is actually defending the Premier, and once again, he has to face the media.
I don't think she had any COVID symptoms. She'd lost her voice. She was pretty upfront about that, but didn't exhibit any other symptoms, and took a precautionary COVID test. Results came back in a couple of hours.
But the instructions from your own Department of Health are clear, saying that you must self-isolate if you've been tested and are awaiting results. Why does that not apply to the Premier?
I think she's evaluated what's important for her. I think that she's not exhibited any symptoms, and she's done the right thing here.
So we can all do that? Just evaluate for ourselves and make a decision?
I think if people aren't exhibiting symptoms, yeah.
So you can take a COVID test and not go home and isolate?
No, if you're not exhibiting symptoms and you're taking a precautionary test, I think what the Premier's done here is right.
But that's contrary to your own guidelines.
I think you'll find the guidelines say if you're exhibiting symptoms.
No, actually, New South Wales Department of Health guidelines, I've been there tonight, I've got it printed out here, says you must self-isolate if you have been tested for COVID-19 and are awaiting results.
Well, once again, he's holding his ground, which is the right thing, and I think the health minister there caught in a tough situation where he didn't want to go against the Premier, but once again, or his own rules that they have made. So I think it is questionable because one rule applies to everyone, and simple as that. That is my taking. Well, right now, while we're talking about international relations, and of course the US and China relationship has been much talked about, and you know that the whole world depends upon their good relation, and of course you know, any conflict there will have a global impact, a global consequences, as they say. So our Prime Minister is asking that, hey, let's give it a bit of breathing space.
The global competition between China and the United States presents new challenges, especially for nation states in the Indo-Pacific. Like other sovereign nations in the Indo-Pacific, our preference in Australia is not to be forced into any binary choices. Our present challenge in the Indo-Pacific, though, is a foretaste for so many others around the world, including the United Kingdom and Europe. Australia desires an open, transparent, and mutually beneficial relationship with China as our largest trading partner, where there are strong people-to-people ties, complementary economies, and a shared interest, especially in regional development and well-being, particularly in the emerging economies of Southeast Asia. Equally, we are absolutely committed to our enduring alliance with the United States, anchored in our shared worldview, liberal democratic values and market-based economic model. And at all times, we must be true to our own values and the protection of our own sovereignty. These are our Australian national interests. Pursuing these interests in the midst of strategic competition between the United States and China, well, it's not straightforward. It is made more complex by the assumptions sometimes cast on Australians' actions. Our actions are wrongly seen and interpreted by some only through the lens of the strategic competition between China and the United States. It's as if Australia does not have its own unique interests or its own views as an independent sovereign state. Now, this is just false. And worse, it needlessly deteriorates relationships. If we are to avoid a new era of polarisation, then in the decades ahead, there must be more nuanced appreciation of individual states' interests in how they deal with the major powers. Stark choices are in no one's interests. Greater latitude will be required from the world's largest powers to accommodate the individual interests of their partners and allies. We all need a bit more room to move. Of course, there are tensions. I won't deny that. But I do feel that many of the tensions are based on some misunderstandings. And I think one of the key misunderstandings is a level of confidence about what we see as the end result. Our end result, from Australia's point of view, as I said, is not containment. Our end result is happy coexistence, respecting each other's sovereignty and systems, and being able to happily coexist in a mutually beneficial relationship. And I believe that's where both parties in this relationship have a lot more work to do to get to that shared understanding of what we see the ultimate goal as being.
So the shared responsibility and where we really need to go. And I think our Prime Minister has summed it quite well that, we really need a little bit of breathing space right at this point in time while the relationship sort of stabilizes. Well, right now, let's take a quick commercial break.
GlobeNet Realty. GlobeNet Realty has been the longest established, trusted and respected agency in its trade area. Washa Chandra, Director of GlobeNet Realty, provides honest and ethical service to her customers. If you are thinking of investing in Brisbane real estate market, or if you are seeking professional property management, then you should contact Usha Chandra today on landline 3865 4466 or mobile 0419 775 416. And for further updates, log on to our website www.globenetralty.com.au. GlobeNet Realty is your own local real estate agency. Situated at Shop 52281 Sandgate Road, Boondall. GlobeNet Realty. Real estate is our world.
And real estate is the world, and don't forget that tomorrow we'll bring to you the real estate update with GlobeNet Realty and USChina right here on this channel. Well, right now it's time to go for the global news. So, well, global leaders meet, which was more around the environment and environmental change. Let's take a look at that.
It was hailed as the world's most important Zoom meeting.
It's a health crisis, it's economic crisis.
The G20 came to prominence in tackling the 2008 financial meltdown. Now it's grappling with another world crisis.
The COVID-19 challenge is, of course, once again a global challenge that can only be answered by all of us together.
Albeit at a distance, the virus keeping leaders apart, the customary handshakes and group photos gone. Instead, premiers, prime ministers and presidents met by video, signing off on a vague promise to spare no effort to ensure coronavirus vaccines are distributed fairly to rich and poor countries alike.
We share a common future and we share common challenges. Therefore, let's also share the solutions together.
But details were scant and consensus elusive, particularly with US leadership missing. On day one, Donald Trump tweeted through opening speeches and then went golfing. On day two, he found his voice, only to hit some familiar notes on another looming disaster: climate change.
The Paris Accord was not designed to save the environment, it was designed to kill the American economy.
Trump withdrew the US from the Paris Agreement. President-elect Joe Biden is promising to rejoin on his first day in office. Until then, Trump is waging old wars.
I refuse to surrender millions of American jobs and send trillions of American dollars to the world's worst polluters.
Leaving China, which has promised net zero emissions by 2060, to claim the moral high ground. This meeting has again exposed the yawning gulf between the Trump administration and US allies on mounting global threats. It's difficult for the G20 to deliver when the US is hostile or indifferent to its agenda. But that will change in January when Joe Biden assumes the presidency. And for many diplomats, that can't come soon enough. Stephen Jedgetts, ABC News, Canberra.
So there you are, President Trump tweeted his response there, and he just went golfing. He said it was all designed to kill the American economy, and that he is not going to surrender the interest of so many people of America. Well, and Joe Biden says the first day he's back in the office, he will rejoin and take up on that. And with that decision, Barack Obama has come back, and he's backing Joe Biden, and of course his selection of the people that he's got so far.
The confidence that our allies had and the world had in American leadership is not going to be restored overnight. There is going to be a lingering sense that America's still divided. Some of the shenanigans that are going on right now around the election, that is making the world question how reliable and steady the U.S. may be. There's been some damage done that is going to take some time to dig ourselves out of. But there's no doubt that Joe's got the right people to do it, and I have every confidence they'll be able to do it. It just may not happen instantaneously.
So there you go, that Joe has got the right people that is saying, well, of course, we know under the campaign and all the election times, there has been a fraud, conspiracy, and lots of theories that have been going. So Trump campaigns cut ties with lawyer Sidney Powell, who was the lawyer who prompted wild election fraud theories. Here's that report.
The Dominion voting systems, the Smartmatic technology software, and the software that goes in other computerized voting systems here as well, not just Dominion, were created in Venezuela at the direction of Hugo Chavez to make sure he never lost an election after one constitutional referendum came out the way he did not want it to come out. One of its most characteristic features is its ability to flip votes. It can set and run an algorithm that probably ran all over the country to take a certain percentage of votes from President Trump and flip them to President Biden. I want the American public to know right now that we will not be intimidated. American patriots are fed up with the corruption from the local level to the highest level of our government, and we are going to take this country back. We are not going to be intimidated. We are not going to back down. We are going to clean this mess up now. President Trump won by a landslide. We are going to prove it, and we are going to reclaim the United States of America for the people who vote for freedom.
So there's that report, and of course, whether how far that goes and what's the truth in that yet remains to be seen. Well, right now, let's go to UK, where Boris Johnson is making an announcement of some of the easing of the restrictions there.
The national restrictions in England will end on the 2nd of December, and they will not be renewed. From next Wednesday, people will be able to leave their home for any purpose and meet others in outdoor public spaces subject to the rule of 6. Collective worship, weddings and outdoor sports can resume, and shops, personal care, gyms and the wider leisure sector can reopen. But without sensible precautions, we would risk the virus escalating into a winter or New Year surge. The incidence of the disease is, alas, still widespread in many areas. So we're not going to replace national measures with a free-for-all of the status quo anti-COVID. We're going to go back instead to a regional tiered approach, applying the toughest measures where COVID is most prevalent.
So the toughest measures that will come out there. So what is the UK Health saying about all of these measures?
This is really encouraging news on the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine that obviously we've been backing since the start, and I'm really very pleased. Really welcome these figures, this data that show that the vaccine in the right dosage can be up to 90% effective. Of course, it's vital that the independent regulator, the MHRA, will need to look at the data, will need to check to make sure that it's effective and safe, of course, but we've got 100 million doses on order, and should all that go well, the bulk of the rollout will be in the new year. And of course this vaccine, this homegrown vaccine, is easier to administer as well than the Pfizer vaccine, because it doesn't need to be stored at minus 70. So having two vaccines that appear to have effectiveness done right in the 90% range is really, really good news.
It is good news that's coming out of UK there about the vaccine, and of course one that need not be stored at those extraordinarily low temperatures. Well, right now going to Hong Kong, where Joshua Young is facing up to 5 years in jail. So he was one of the most prominent activists there. Let's take a look at that news.
3 activists, 3 charges, 3 guilty pleas. Joshua Wong, Agnes Chow and Ivan Lam walked into court today as Hong Kong's political chill set in.
Neither prison bars, nor election bans, nor any other arbitrary power will stop us from activism. What we are doing now is to explain the value of freedom to the world.
7 years ago, the trio were making magazine covers as a youthful force for the future. But Hong Kong is very different now. The 3 are accused of organising and attending one of the many protests last year outside police headquarters, which police didn't authorise. Joshua Wong pleaded guilty to 2 of the 3 charges, yelling, "Everyone hang in there, come on," as a judge decided to keep the 3 behind bars ahead of sentencing next month.
We will continue to fight for freedom, and now is not the time for us to kowtow to Beijing and to surrender. Thank you.
It's Joshua Wong's 4th stint behind bars. For others, it's a first taste of prison.
I could be in jail for the first time in my life today or in the near future. Of course, I do feel anxious.
Hong Kong's political transformation is rapidly accelerating. Activists jailed, journalists charged, politicians disqualified. Last week, the entire elected opposition resigned when China's government changed the law so it could force out elected representatives it deemed unpatriotic. And yet there's still cautious defiance. This group of relatives gathered to call on China to release another 12 activists who were caught trying to flee Hong Kong by boat. They're now detained just across the water on the mainland. Letters supposedly written by the detainees say conditions are good and they don't need outside lawyers, a claim few believe is genuine. Bill Birtles, ABC News.
So there you are. That's that news about the activities. And Joshua Young, I think he will go down in the history books, quite bold and standing up for what he believes in. Well, right now let's go to US for the final report for today, where we look at the number of COVID-19 cases and how and just to take a look at that graph. Of course, it's brought to you by Casey Briggs.
Virtually uncontrolled spread across the entire United States for weeks now has left the COVID case curve looking like this, and more people are getting seriously ill. More than 80,000 Americans now in hospital being treated with COVID-19. That's a bigger number than we've seen at any other point in this pandemic. More than 16,000 of those patients are in intensive care, receiving more treatment. And that, again, is more than we've seen at any other point through the year. The most seriously ill, those on ventilators needing breathing support, there are more than 5,000 patients there. That's not yet a record, but again, from the trajectory you can see it's well on the way to setting one. All this means that before too long we're likely to start seeing the United States recording record numbers of deaths every day with this disease. Back in March, one of the reasons that governments tried to flatten the curve was to prevent their hospital and health systems getting overwhelmed. But now, in November, there's again signs the United States is under some strain. In 33 states, 1 in 10 of all hospital patients, for all reasons, have COVID-19. And in 4 states, more than a fifth of all patients are infected. And some areas are faring even worse. El Paso in Texas has had more than 1/2 of all of its checked-in patients infected with COVID-19 for nearly a month. The National Guard has been brought in to assist with temporary morgues in the region, and that's after prisoners were being used to assist with moving bodies. The bigger these numbers get and the taller this curve reaches, well, the more likely it is that we'll start to see those sorts of scenes being repeated in more parts of the country.
So the numbers are at 12 million. That's a lot. That is quite a lot. Well, ladies and gentlemen, right now let's take a look at all the functions and events that are taking place in and around Brisbane. So ladies and gentlemen, that's all we have for today. It's been wonderful having your company. So good to see you all the time. And of course, please do share the link and let others know. And of course, subscribe to the channel. And of course, follow us on Facebook so that every time we go live, you are notified. Because most of the days we will be at 10 a.m. Some of the days it might be on a different time. And of course, on weekends as well, it's up till Saturday, and there's no no streaming on Sunday. On Sunday we'll be starting that musical segment from December, and that will be something that we'll make the full announcement of that. But once again, it's wonderful to have your company. Please do spread the word around, and if there's anything you'd like to discuss, there's so many interviews that we have already lined up which we will bring to you in the very, very near future, all of community interest that I'd like to say with all of you. Until then, it's goodbye from me. Enjoy the rest of today. Looking out the window, it just looks glorious out there today. A little bit smoky, but it's still wonderful. So until tomorrow, enjoy yourself, but most importantly, stay well, look after yourself, and if you are planning on traveling, book now.